Good morning, everybody, and happy Aloha Friday. And so I got a compliment on this shirt, so thank you. This is a brand new Aloha shirt just for all of you. First time I've ever worn it. And we celebrate Aloha Friday. It's Casual Friday in Hawaii. It's just something I enjoy doing as well. And I encourage you, if you'd like, to wear your Aloha shirts, even though it'll be a little chilly to do so, but you're welcome to. In addition to being Aloha Friday, today, a day very appropriate to job-seeking groups, today is National Donut Day. And so too bad we're not all together. We could be meeting and having a munchkin or a donut hole. But one thing that job seekers like to do when they announce that they've landed is to celebrate with some sort of treat. And it seems like donuts are the ones that most people bring, probably because they're just so easy to pick up in the store. So if you feel like celebrating or enjoying a sweet treat, you might try having a donut today for National Donut Day. I did not confirm. I think Krispy Kreme does give out a free donut. Maybe some of the others do as well, so you can check into that. PSG of Mercer County is a group that is here for you, anybody that is in any career transition. And what we are here for, our mission is to help make you become more efficient and more effective in your own job search. And we do that with several resources that we have available. Certainly, we do hold a weekly meeting. We do hold this meeting just about every week and every Friday, probably about 47 or 8 meetings during the year. And we offer a topical presentation, something that's always relevant to the job seeker, and also an opportunity for you to meet and speak with other people. So it doesn't matter who you speak with or connect with or network with. Everybody knows other people that may be the link to your next career, to your next job, to your next hiring manager. So it's a great idea. If you want to hang around with us a little bit later after the meeting ends, we'll turn off the recording and we'll just hang around the meeting room and chit chat a little bit. So we do try and provide some AV type resources for everyone. In addition, we do have our LinkedIn group. Our LinkedIn group is called PSG of Mercer County. Just about everything we do is branded to our name, PSG of Mercer County. So if you are not yet a member of our LinkedIn group, I encourage you and strongly suggest you join our group. Our group is a little bit private in that our members are all members who've been to at least one of our in-person or virtual meetings. We try to avoid, and we've been pretty good at it, keeping out people that are not interested in helping job seekers. They're joining groups for only their own benefit. They're either name collectors or list collectors or group collectors. And if it's only for their own interests, that's not really what our mission is for. So we have over 1,690 members in our group right now. So what's nice is even if you are not even connected to 1,690 plus people, by joining our group, by joining any group, all those people in the group become virtual extensions of your own network, and you can email them, which is the LinkedIn emails, and so you can contact them. And what's nice about using our group, or likely any of the job seeker support groups, if you reach out to someone through an email, there's a good chance they will respond because they understand the process of job search and the importance of staying connected. Once in our group, start contributing and participating. If you have an interesting article that you read, copy that link and paste it in the group. And then you get credit for contributing to the group. And LinkedIn likes when we're active in LinkedIn. That's a great way to be active. Maybe you got an email from a recruiter, but the email is for a terrific job that has nothing to do with your career. Copy out the content of the email, maybe the job description, and paste it into the group discussion section. And that way everyone else in the group can see it and may be helpful to somebody else. So any job leads that you have, articles, posts, meetings that are coming up, all very important. So please consider joining our LinkedIn group. Also, we do have a website. It is psgofmercercounty.org, psgofmercercounty.org. And if you haven't visited our website or seen it recently, I encourage you to do so. It is more than just a landing page for our group. It is over 120 web pages of content. There's a lot of information that's there, plus links to lots of other resources that are outside of our group directly. Matter of fact, we have a resources tab right at the top, a resources menu item, and there are 44 external resources that are there. There are links to 15 other networking groups, 27 other career resources like coaches and other organizations that help. There's even one for a personal wellness website, and one for a mental health website, because we know, especially during transition or during COVID, there could be a little bit of personal stress that's on, and maybe personal wellness or mental health tips would be helpful for us. So go take a look at our website. A lot of content that's there for you. So as a reminder for our ground rules, in just a moment, I will be turning the meeting over to Cathy. She is our presenter today. I'll introduce her in just a moment as well. And she is encouraging us, she will be encouraging us to be as interactive as we can. She's going to have lots of breakpoints where we can ask questions. So as you have a question or a thought that you wish to discuss with Cathy, just put that in chat. You can either write the word or type the word question, and that's the digital equivalent of raising your hand, and I will be watching that. Cathy will as well. Or type the word question followed by your question, and I'll read your question on your behalf. If you just type the question, when she takes a break, we will call on you. So those will be our ground rules. But like I said, please keep your microphones on mute, just again, so we make sure there's no accidental background noise that may come through. Maybe there's a barking dog or a neighbor with a leaf blower or something like that. We just want to try and minimize. Oops. Sorry, Mitch, I unmuted you. What was that?
Where is the chat? I didn't see where the chat was.
So in the upper right corner of your screen, there's an icon that looks kind of like this, a little circle with a tab.
Oh, I see it now. Thanks, David.
Okay. Yeah. The other thing you can do is keep your microphone on mute and scream loudly. We may hear you. That may work as well, as long as your microphone is on mute. Okay. And by the way, that's not what you do. I'm just sorry. Okay. So PSG of Mercer County is very pleased to welcome back Cathy Kreyche. Cathy Kreyche works as an independent consultant. An editor and a writer, she partners with businesses and nonprofits to develop content for books, articles, reports, websites, and blogs. In addition, she helps individuals write and publish their memoirs. While at Management Concepts, a training and consulting company in Tysons Corners, Virginia, Cathy spearheaded thought leadership initiatives and relished the opportunity she had to attend conferences, connect with people, and give presentations on how to become more effective and happier in work and life. Cathy has a BA from the University of Santa Clara and an MA from Indiana University in Bloomington in history. She studies meditation through the Washington Center for Consciousness Studies, enjoys participating in local writing groups, and took up botanical drawing and watercoloring during the pandemic. And she serves on the executive committee of PSG of Mercer County and lives in Hopewell Township. PSG of Mercer County is very pleased to welcome our very own Cathy Kreyche.
Well, good morning, everyone. I have a little sweaty palms here. This one of the big stressors is public speaking, and I haven't done this on a remote platform, so this will be a little bit new. So, David, if you realize that I haven't asked for questions, please feel free to interrupt me because I might get a little bit too much into the weeds in the presentation, and I really do want to see how interactive we can make this. So the topic again, using stress to your advantage. I realized after this that actually a lot of times now you see the word anxiety more than stress, and we'll talk about this, but stress is something that we live with and we have been living with as human beings for forever, essentially. Let's see, got to see if I can move my slides here, just a second. David, I am not seeing how to move my slides. I don't know whether you can help with that.
I think the easiest way is just use your mouse and click on the screen.
There we go. Okay, all right, that's it. All right, well, good morning, everyone. Again, I think here I am with a little bit of sweaty palms, and I don't necessarily profess to be an expert in stress, except that as a human being I am, and I do read about it, and I'm interested in how to work with it, how to dance with stress. I think all of you are experts in your own right, as it's something that we deal with on an everyday basis. So what I want to cover today is, what is stress? And that seems like a really obvious question, but my belief is that if we go into it a little bit more, it gives us an opportunity to look at it from different perspectives and perhaps gain some more tools in working effectively with it and actually partnering with it. So we'll also be looking at how do we humans respond to stress. And we know that sometimes our responses to stress are not particularly productive. So most importantly, what can we do to respond with greater awareness and self-efficacy? How we can't really control stress, but we can manage our responses to it. And again, hopefully partner with stress to help us move ahead with what we want to achieve in our lives and how we want to live our lives in the best possible way. So what is stress? Thinking about circumstances around job loss, things can be small stressors, medium stressors, or big stressors. And I guess when I think about making a phone call, maybe networking, that's a stress. Another stress, probably maybe even greater than a medium stress, is a Zoom interview. I don't know how many of you have had remote interviews or in-person interviews in the past year and a half, but that is definitely a stress we as job seekers have to deal with. And of course, the big one, the big kahuna, is losing your job. And all of us have experienced that job loss. I have a job loss story which goes back a little ways, but before I moved to New Jersey, I was working in Virginia, and I'd had different roles at the same company, but I worked there for 17 years, and as much as I knew it was a good idea to move around, I found the work interesting, and frankly, I didn't love looking for a job. It wasn't an ongoing process that I did. So what happened is there was a reorg happening, and it was really clear that people like me who had been there a while were being let go. We were considered, making too much money. We didn't have the same viewpoint as the new management that came in. So the writing was on the wall, and then it wasn't just on the wall, it was actually in my hand because I was told I was going to be let go within a few months. So what was my very productive response to that major stress, knowing I was going to lose my job? Well, I had 3 more months on the job, and I did what I just normally did. I continued to work my job. I was getting messages that I had to continue to do my job, but I could look for a job. So it was a little bit ambivalent, and I just went to my comfort zone. I went and I did my duty. I was responsible. I followed up on everything, and I did a little bit of job search, but I would say it was kind of 90% to 10%. Not the smartest response, but that was my response to this huge stress, knowing that I was going to lose my job. So a little bit of denial in there, or maybe a lot of denial. But it was, again, also going back to my comfort zone, which was being a responsible person and doing my work. Not in my best interest at all, but that's how I approached it, and eventually had to leave that job and was working to some extent from zero, looking for a job, and had decided ultimately to go as an independent contractor. So that's my story, and I know we all here have different kinds of job loss stories, maybe with slightly different responses or different themes, but it's a story that we could all write and share if we had the time. So those responses to job loss may be somewhat different, but there's probably some commonalities in themes. As a sense of, could be anger or grief or loss. But again, we have most difficulty dealing with job loss when we are super identified with our jobs. And I had a sense I probably should have left earlier because I was frustrated with certain things in my work, but overwhelmingly, I did the same thing. I continued on. And part of it was, I think I had made my job my life. I was so identified with my job. I didn't really see myself outside of that. I worked long days. I thought about my job. I dreamt about my job. I always felt like I really should get paid overtime for that because I thought, well, heck, I'm thinking about it. I'm worrying about it. But I was sort of so immersed in that culture, in the people I worked with, in what I did for a living, that I really couldn't see beyond where I was. So that's my job story. The commonalities of job losses is how do we deal with change? That's the stressor that comes up. How do we deal with that loss of a sense of self as we identify with our jobs, and also a loss of structure? That was really important for me. I knew what I was supposed to do when I got to work in the morning. I had a real strong sense of structure. When I was looking for a job, that was a challenge for me. And then obviously the financial stress, knowing that we need to make a living, is a huge stressor. So a question is stress always bad? Is it a threat or is it a challenge? And to a large extent, this depends on how we perceive the stressor and our capacity to deal with the source of stress. Now, I'll share a little bit of a COVID story with you. I know there was some talk at the beginning about vaccines and vaccination cards and such. I have a vaccine story. We all do, again. This is one thing we share. When the vaccine came out, I had wanted to get it. Well, initially I was a little bit skeptical, was like, this was developed too fast, but then very quickly I wanted to get that shot. And my significant other, he was on the same page with me. Let's get the shot as soon as we can. So went through all the hoops, registering with Mercer County or state of New Jersey, and going to different sites and hearing rumors of where you could get it. And I spent a lot of time on the computer trying to get an appointment. Eventually I did. It was in April in Moorestown. And this was back beginning of January. So that was 4 months out, but at least I had something like a bird in the hand at that point. So I was kind of settled in that that's just how it's going to be, going to hunker down. And one Sunday morning, I got a call from a good friend of mine who said, you know what, I hate to bother you on a Sunday morning, but on our local Facebook page, there was a note from someone who worked at a mega site in Edison that there were shots available. They had extra shots, and that you might be able to get a shot if you showed up. So got in touch with Tony and convinced him, yes, we're going to go up there and we're going to take our best shot. We're going to go to Edison and see if we can get it. Well, I was totally energized. I mean, this was like, yes, this is a challenge. This is fun. Let's go to Edison. Well, there's a snowstorm coming that day. We had absolutely no idea. We were getting there relatively late, no idea whether this was going to happen. And he was somebody, he was an engineer, he's retired right now, who likes planning. He likes predictability. I'm the opposite. I just like when things happen and I can respond instantly. So for me, that was exciting. It was fun. We waited the whole day. I had to kind of sort of tamp down my enthusiasm for this craziness, as Tony was kind of sitting in the truck getting really frustrated and wondering what the heck we were doing. Well, it turned out well for both of us, and it was kind of a justification for me. I think we got one of the last 9 shots at that mega center, and then we got an appointment immediately for 3 weeks later. The next time it was a little bit more boring for me, but we got the shot. And then recently I got the booster, and that was no challenge whatsoever. It was easy to get an appointment at CVS. But my point is that we all have different reactions to stress. So what is stressful for me may not be stressful for you. Let's see if we can just take a little quick poll here on some, I don't know if people want to reveal, but if you want to put in the chat what is stressful for you, or even just vote on that vaccine thing. Would you be Cathy, or would you be Tony? Would you be excited by that, or just like, what the heck am I wasting my time for? David, do I just hit the chat myself to see?
Yes, if you click the chat button,
okay,
you'll
great.
see what people are saying.
All right, I don't know. You know, it may be too early for self-revelation here, but let's see. All right, if not, we'll just kind of move on.
There's one.
All right. Julie says, I'd rather be Cathy. Okay. All right. Lots of excitement, yeah. And Greg says one of the stressors for him is having to wait for callbacks or time to get a meeting. Let's see. Dom says, I tried 3 times to get a real ID and missed all 3 because the documents were not right. I'm assuming that's stressful, very stressful. All right. Going back to Mitch, what Mitch said about after the interviewing, wondering if there'll be next steps. I remember once back in the day, and I had one date with somebody, and I was so excited, and I was really hoping to get another call. And I remember a friend of mine telling me, don't call the caterers, you know, because it was very hard to wait. I kind of wanted that immediate response. All right, here's a Tony. Here's an engineer type. I want to plan. I want to know what's going to happen. So anyway, we do have very different responses to stress. All right, reattach chat. Sorry, I've got learning on the fly here. All right. So if we look, we step back and we look at more an evolutionary lens to how we respond to stress, or actually some more, I guess to be more exact, really an awareness that to some extent we are still mammals, and we have some very instinctive responses to stressors. And it's, by the way, this is kind of weird. I use this PowerPoint design these, it sort of tells you what the design is supposed to be, so that airplane for flight and then fight and freeze, I got a kick out of that. I couldn't get rid of it. So here are some typical responses. One is panic, and we get away from the source of stress or the threat. That is the flight response. Another is to fight. So the big cats are not going to be running from a challenge, but running towards it and engaging it. And then, of course, the lowly turtle, which I probably have to say I was the turtle in my job loss story. The turtle is going to hide in the shell and just wait for that threat to pass. Unfortunately for us, oftentimes, sometimes they do, but oftentimes not. But we do have these ways of kind of animal-like or reptile-like ways of dealing with stress that we perceive as a threat. So that we respond to some extent like animals. We have some responses very similar to that. So we'll be digging into that a little bit. But one thing that we have that animals have to maybe a lesser extent, although there's a lot of research now that says animals have much more consciousness than we're aware of. But because we have consciousness, we have a mind, we're able to think about what is threatening us. And that has tremendous advantages, but it also creates difficulties for us in that we have this animal response. We may have a bodily response, an instinctive response to threat, and then we also think about it. And in thinking about it, when we don't have the capacity to deal with that threat, that creates anxiety for us. And anxiety is what really an internal response to threat. So stress actually, even though we kind of use the two terms interchangeably, stress is really more something coming at us from the outside that's pushing against us. Anxiety is our response to, our response to threat. It's an internal response. It's manifest in a lot of different ways. It could be worry. Oftentimes it really is worry. It could be panic in a more sort of extreme cases. We could have a panic attack. And anxiety is sometimes people consider it an emotion. I would say it's more of a kind of overall descriptive term that also can be covering up a lot of other emotions. So beneath that anxiety could be anger, could be fear, could be sense of helplessness. It could be depression. There are many things that could be underlying that. So I'm going back again to the basics here. What is stress and how long has it been around? Well, there's a lot of focus now on in the newspapers. You see articles and magazines about stress that we're currently dealing with. And so in some senses, we think we're special in that we have particular stressors. We have things like these smartphones that are on constantly pinging us. We have the stress of working on computers. They give us tremendous power and capacity, but they also sit us at our desk for hours and hours a day, sometimes feeling somewhat, chained to them, I guess, in a lot of ways. So that there are things in modern life that are very specific. And obviously, the huge obvious stressor is, most recently, is COVID. The stresses we're dealing with now, again, as I said, we think we're kind of special, and in some ways we are because these are new stresses. But if you go back to the Industrial Revolution, let's say you were a peasant, in the medieval times, you were a peasant working your lord's fields there. I mean, unimaginable stresses. And actually, in many ways, life has gotten so much easier. There's the work of getting through daily life was so challenging. And then you think of the Industrial Revolution and moving from a farm to a factory where you're really being forced to act like a machine. We probably have those feelings to some extent right now, but stress has been around forever. And it's just the nature of it and how we deal with it that changes over time. So let's see. So it's important to know about stress, that the sources of stress are really social and culturally based. They really depend on what's stressful in American society may not be stressful in Japan. There's some commonalities because we're both modern cultures, but there are differences. But we are part of a system, and the kinds of stresses we feel have a commonality. Our responses to them are very unique. We, again, going back to the Cathy Tony description, we may be responding very differently to different kinds of stresses. And maybe a messy kitchen is bothering somebody and it doesn't bother someone else. That might be stressful. But stress ultimately is part of being human. It's critical to our survival, even though we consider it a challenge. So I ask you, what would you think about a life without stress? Is that appealing to you? If you want to answer in the chat, have some ideas about that. What would life without stress be like? How would you describe that? Would it be desirable? What would you be doing if you had no stress in your life? All right, we got one response here, a few responses. Oh, Don says yes, no stress. Okay. Greg, it seems like there would be no urgency. Boring. MW says boring. Julie, not appealing. I do better with some challenges. Joseph says no stress, plenty of money, no need to go to work. That sounds like it can be appealing. Donald, not challenging. James would not be motivated. Now, think about the word motivated. It's a very interesting word. It actually comes from the root of moving, so it means you wouldn't be moving anywhere. Sam says, I don't have any frame of reference for no stress at all. Okay. It's so much part of our life. David says, life without stress is not good for me. Stress is a motivator. Anybody want to open their microphone and talk about that? Stress is not a motivator. David, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, Cathy. Good morning. Really good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you or hear you.
Yeah. Excuse me. I find that overcoming any kind of stress is very, very good as far as a means for being able to focus on what the particular issue is. To me, stress is like walking in a maze. It's a dead end, or it may appear to be a dead end. So then what I do is I go back deep within myself and say, okay, what can I do to get outside of this dead end and get back on the track?
That's a really good image, a really powerful image. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Hi, this is James Ledwith. I'd like to share my thoughts, if that's possible.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, James.
I think with when you have stress, I think it helps. You got to keep moving forward, and like what Marty Latman says, always be positive. And things change, and reach out to people, and again, just have a positive perspective.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, positivity really helps, and you're talking very much about how do we perceive that stress. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else want to share your thoughts?
I think.
Yeah, Don Furgis. Hello, everyone. I would, for me, when I said that, yes, my major stress in life is not enough money coming in. Mm-hmm. If I had an extra $1,000, $1,500 a month, I wouldn't be stressed out at all. I have a number of personal projects I'd like to work on, 2 internet websites, another major project that I need somebody like, what's his name, 2 guys that are doing space, Elon Musk and somebody else, mm-hmm. and a number of books that I'd like to write. But I'm constantly stressed because I feel like I have to put that all aside and try to continue to look for work of some sort just to maybe get an extra $1,000, $1,500 in the door to help here in the household. And by the way, my son also is always in the back of my mind. I wish I could get a real good job, make some money. He became a veterinarian. That's great. The bottom side of that is he owes $300,000 in school debt. So I would like to work and help him pay, if I could pay $1,500, $2,000 a month to him, that would help me. But my stress is just constant. I wake up at, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. Where can I get some money? How can I get some kind of job? And, do that kind of thing. And then work on what I want.
Yeah.
Work on the things that I really want to do.
Absolutely. What you're saying, it really does. If you don't have the financial means, it really makes it harder to do anything. I don't know if most of you probably have heard of Maslow's hierarchy, which is a kind of sort of a hierarchy of needs, and the fundamental need to enable us to, what he would say is self-actualize, is the need for survival. And so financial stresses are huge because they really help us survive and give us the opportunity to move into other places. My hope is that further down the line in this presentation, there may be a few resources that might help you at least devote some piece of your life or your mental space to some of those things that you get energy from and want to do, even if you can't do them right now in the way that you'd like.
If I can just mention one additional thing, Cathy, one of the things I'd like to do is maybe write. And I happened to see two things. One, very recently, just the other day, Jake Tapper from CNN has written a couple of books. I bought one of them. He wrote on Truman. And he was asked the question, he was interviewed, how do you write? You do an hour-long show every day. How did you write? He said, I dedicated 15 minutes a day for writing. Then the other day, I see Allison Camerata. She's the CNN host from 1 to 3 p.m. or 1 to 4, something like that. Same question. How did you write anything? And she says, I did writing as a stress relief mechanism. So same problem. I'm doing all these things. I got the show going on, all this here stuff. How did you do it? I got it down to 5 minutes a day. If I could write on my she has a small little tablet she writes on. If I could write for 5 minutes a day, that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, but no, that's a great examples to provide, and it doesn't apply just to writing, obviously. I mean, this is something that we can really take in. I mean, it's hard when we want the time and the space to do what we want to do, and it'll oftentimes never be there. I mean, once we get a job, let's say you're looking for a job, you get a job, it's the same challenge. How do we set aside time for what might be more deeply meaningful for ourselves? But I think David mentioned I'm in writing groups, and a lot of times what we do are writing prompts where we have 5 minutes, 10 minutes to do something, and it's amazing what you can actually produce. So that's thank you so much for those examples. They're really good to keep in mind. And obviously, you don't have Jake Tapper's income. we all don't, but there is something to be said for that. And I think high achieving people usually make time to do things in their lives that they want to do. And it's possible. It really is. And we have to give up our notion of maybe the exact way in which we want to do something that's dear to our hearts, but there are ways that we can make the time and the space psychologically to do that. So thank you so much.
I think, if I may, one other thought on this whole thing is I don't know the exact quote, but basically there was an old saying that goes, if you didn't have the bad, you wouldn't know what the good is. So, I think if you didn't have the stressful things in your life, you wouldn't know what the unstressful ones were and appreciate them.
Yeah, no, I think that there's a lot of truth to that. And that, I mean, when you think about a stress-free life, I think somebody mentioned that it's boring. And the reason it's boring is that we don't have those ups and downs. We don't experience those strong emotions that of joy and of sadness that are part of being human. And so that's really so apt when we think about stress. And so I think to the extent to which we can embrace or accept it, we don't necessarily want to have damaging effects on us, but stress is part of being human, and part of experiencing all those highs and lows.
I think too that the stress creates challenges, and the challenges tend to make us more creative because you have to solve the problem. And what's the old saying about necessity is the mother of invention?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's so true. And we are problem solvers. I mean, I think one of the challenges I find of working alone is I actually like working in groups, and I recently had an opportunity to work on a project where I'm working with others, and there was the added benefit of about 5 people solving problems constantly, and it was exhausting, but it was also really exhilarating and strengthening to know that you can overcome challenges, you can solve problems, and that's really part of what makes us human beings too. And you know, and I know as baby boomers, and maybe most of us are, we are very busy, even if we're retired. We're not like our grandparents, but I know with my grandparents in that generation, retirement meant just resting and not doing much of anything. But I think we are wired a little bit differently that way. Yeah, well, thank you so much for all your contributions. I think you've kind of previewed a lot of what we're going to talk about the rest of the way. David, how are we doing for time here?
We have plenty of time. I don't know how many slides
all right.
you have.
We just got to keep people interested, but I just kind of wanted to see how we're doing here.
Yep.
All right, very good. Let's see. We got just, I just encourage everybody to look at the chat as well. I may not be able to go through all of them, but people have such really valuable contributions and perspectives to share. So going back to stress, here we got these nice responses to stress, and here I'm going back to stress. But let's look a little, dig into the how our physiology responds to stress. If it's an immediate threat or even a distant one, and we talked about financial stresses, we do have a physiological response to threat. It's not just a mental thing. Fundamentally, we respond to stress in our bodies. And under stress, the body is actually perceiving a threat and responding as if there's a threat out there. Even though it may not be a lion or something that's threatening us, our body sometimes doesn't make that differentiation. It's operating at a more instinctive level. So our bodies, what happens under stress is we start our breathing, or we start shutting down certain things. So we may be holding our breath for certain reasons. We might be trying to stay still. We also get a huge amount of blood that's pumped to our extremities so that we are activated. Chemically, our body changes, and we are primed to deal with what's in front of us under threat. Basically, what's important to know is your body is aware before your mind is. And so if you can tune into your body, and if you can develop some practices that help your body respond in a different way to threats that aren't immediate but are ongoing, we really have more capacity to think creatively, to do that problem solving, to be able to use our mental capabilities that we have, our experiences, and bring those to bear and respond more effectively to that threat. I guess I've kind of gone over this a little bit, but basically, again, a threat, let's say we see a deer, we got deer all the heck over. I'm in Hopewell Township in a rural area, and that's one of the things that you're constantly running into is a deer running across the road. And that's a threat to us because we might have a collision with a deer. We do not want that for the deer or ourselves, but we will make a split-second decision. We don't think about whether we're going to step on the brakes. We do it immediately because we've gotten a message from our bodies, and what we're seeing, we're picking up with our senses. We see that deer, we slam on the brakes, and we've responded to this emergency. Again, we are very alert when we're under threat. We're also very hyper vigilant. So if I take that example of a deer, as soon as I've had to slam on my brakes to avoid that deer, as I'm driving along, I am watching that road. I am so aware that a deer at any time can jump out after me. I'm probably so aware that I'm not necessarily aware of the person who's frustrated that I'm going so slowly on the road, and all I'm focusing on is looking to the sides of the road and seeing whether there's a deer that's coming at me. So to some extent, when I'm responding to a threat, I'm losing a larger sense of awareness because I'm focused on what I think is going to happen, or what has just happened and what might happen to me again. And that translates to other areas than the deer. But let's just back up again. There are some benefits to that. There are superpowers that we acquire. We have a lot more clarity and focus. We're primed to act. We generally are much more decisive in these situations because we have our body is primed to respond. If we translate that to work, we have an ability to actually get things done when we're so primed in that way. And interestingly enough, a lot of times we operate very well under deadlines. Deadline, actually, I looked into what a deadline meant and where that word came from. It actually originated in the Civil War. When there were prisoners of war, there was actually a line around where the prisoners were gathered, and that was considered the deadline because if a prisoner crossed it, they would be shot. So there's some very strong urgency in that. Fortunately, we're not shot if we miss a deadline, but there are consequences that we deal with. So again, getting back to that deer, one of the difficulties or pitfalls of that stress response is that we get too focused and too narrow, and we lose the big picture. If we think, let's say, about a job loss. I remember one time I had a job loss, and I immediately looked across the street. There was a diner. I'm like, I'm going to get a job as a waitress. I went over there. I got the job. Pretty much ruined my health for the time being. But at the time, I was so panicked on losing a job, I really didn't step back and think about my future. I thought, this is something I can do. I can earn some money. May not have been a bad move, but to some extent, I probably had more options that were available to me than I saw at the time. So I was kind of like looking at that deer in the road, and instead of avoiding it, I guess I was going after it. But again, when we're under stress, a lot of times we can act very impulsively when we need maybe a different response. We could make decisions that we regret from panic or anxiety. Think about, well, actually, just about one example I have is, an email you might regret sending. Maybe your boss sent you an email that just pissed you off. And so you responded back with an email, but you didn't know exactly what was going on, what particular pressures he or she was responding to. And if you'd stopped and maybe had a conversation and gotten more information, you'd have greater freedom in a way to respond more productively. So there are times when it's really important when you're under stress to calm down, to get more information, to more knowledge, to respond in a more maybe thoughtful way, or a way that it's not so much a good or bad way, but a way that's more beneficial to you because it opens things up rather than getting too narrow. The other legacy we have of having this kind of very strong stress response is that we tend to catastrophize and read absolutely the worst into situations. So as an animal, we're always constantly looking out for things that might be threatening to us. Maybe that email felt like that kind of a threat, but it really wasn't. It was just an email, and that we had many other ways to respond to it. So that's something to be aware of when we're under stress and we can feel that stress in our bodies. Is this a situation where I really have to respond immediately to, or do I have an opportunity to kind of open my focus to look at the situation more thoughtfully? And so that's what we're going to focus on now, is how can we respond to stressful situations with more awareness and self-efficacy, and become that kind of problem-solving human being that we talked about earlier. All right, before I go on, does anybody have any questions? Just please put them in the chat, or just unmute and bring them up. All right, we'll just continue on then. So again, let's return to our stress response in our body. I think the first step to being able to respond differently to stress, or in a productive way, in a way that benefits us, is that we have to be aware of what's going on in our body. If we have to notice what's happening within ourselves, and also not just within our bodies, but our thoughts and our emotions, because under stress, we can, a lot of times people go one of two ways. We can get extremely emotional and very worked up emotionally, or if your kind of favorite function or your way to deal with stress is to think, our thoughts can go crazy. We think that we're solving problems, but a lot of times we're sitting there worrying, thinking, and we'll notice if you are able to stop, and if you notice that there's absolutely no space between your thoughts, that they're kind of like popcorn that's popping. Those are times you may not want to listen to what you're saying to yourself too seriously, because that's not necessarily, those are thoughts that are coming up in a kind of a panicked, obsessive mode. In terms of your emotions, we talked about the email, and when you have a really strong emotion, I wouldn't say ignore it, but you want to stop and really understand what's going on, and maybe take a little bit of the edge off of it before you respond. The other way to create a larger sense of freedom and awareness is to have that more open focus, to take in more information, to have a sense of everything that's going on around you. And there's also a component to which when we are under threat, we feel isolated. We feel oftentimes socially isolated. We think it's all on us to solve our problem. But important in that time to realize that we are connected to one another, and that we have opportunities for support, and from a spiritual sense, we're connected to something larger, and that really may depend on your beliefs or whatever, but there's a way in which we are not these like little, I don't know, ball bearings, we're not that isolated, and that we have this opportunity to connect to one another, and that it's that connective tissue that can be so supportive in helping us through difficult and stressful times. Let's see. So again, how do we respond to stress with self-efficacy? Well, we got a lot of energy that may be released. We need to direct in a more positive way, and also to recognize the message that we might be feeling in our bodies. Let's identify what's going on and ask ourselves, do we have the resources to respond to a challenge? Because typically, stress is seen as a threat when we're overwhelmed, when we feel like we really don't know which way to turn and what to do next. And we feel somehow like there's just a lack of resources. Or a perfect example might be sitting at my desk and it's like, I just have so many things pressing at me. I don't know what to do next. So there's a way in which we have to be able to tap into resources that we have internally and externally, and identify how we can get access to them. Obviously, one example is PSG. I mean, that's a place where we can get all kinds of resources on job search, and there are other ways that other opportunities that we have all around us. And again, I'll go back to the fact that actually, in some ways, the availability of resources can be paralyzing. And so we have to be able to calm ourselves enough to really identify which directions we want to go, what resources we want to tap into. All right, let's go back to good stress and perceiving stress as a challenge. I think we've really covered this already when we had this sharing earlier, that stress is not always bad. It can be good if it gives us this feeling of vitality. It can be energizing when it's a challenge. And it all really depends on whether we feel that we've got the capability of dealing with it. One of the difficulties, I think, of stress is that oftentimes if we're on territory that is unknown for us, that's kind of unexplored territory, that's when we feel stressed because we don't know what's ahead of us. That can be exciting, but it's also terrifying. I just have a little mini example. I got a job description. It was in a different location, and I knew somebody at the company, and they were encouraging me to apply. Well, I wasn't really looking for a full-time job, but there's a lot of benefits to doing that as opposed to working on my own. So I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. And I knew I had a little bit of an inside track. I have to say, my first reaction as I looked at it was like, oh, I don't want to do a job application. I don't want to rewrite my resume. I don't want to do this. And I could say it's laziness, but I think it was actually fear underlying that. And I ended up going through it. It took I guess it was a process of about 4 days of applying and getting a response back. I didn't get an interview, but I got a very positive response to my email. And I also realized that that journey for me, that little journey, I hadn't applied for a job in a long time, was a really energizing for me, because all of a sudden, because I had sort of worked through my resistance, I had this sense of freedom and opportunity. So it didn't even have to work out for me to realize that this kind of stress and going through it can be an extremely positive experience. So anyway, I'll stop right now. Does anyone else have a similar story, or even a different one to talk about good stress? You all may have shared them already, so we'll just continue to move on. I may stop. Is there anybody have any questions right now? Okay. So the kinds of stress that were experienced, that I experienced in giving that, doing that job application, was what I call episodic stress. It didn't last a long time. It was like highly stressful. Then it went down and life was normal again. I kind of recalibrated. That's the kind of stress that actually is beneficial to us. The more damaging stress is the chronic stress. And that's the stress that can really damage our health. It's stress that just continues at a certain level, does not go up and down. It's that stress that we're constantly experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And it's the stress that the worry that we have about, getting a job. It's chronic. It's always in the back of our minds. We may take a day off, but we're constantly thinking, I need to be doing this, I'm not doing that. That is chronic stress, and it can create inflammation in the body. It can really wear us down psychologically as well. Let me just check real quick here. I have something in the chat. Oh, okay, that David, thanks. Okay. The other stress, which I think of as shadow stress for us, is traumatic stress. Now, traumatic stress is really is typically something hugely out of the ordinary. It's something that soldiers experience, but it may be more common than we're aware of. Traumatic stress is overwhelming, stress, horror, could be PTSD or some kind of abuse, usually something experienced as a child. It's something where we're living as if the past is alive in the present. And my belief is that understanding traumatic stress actually really helps us in dealing with maybe more, quote, normal stress, but it also gives us a window into the fact that we all probably in our lives have experienced some level of trauma, and that we're reading that into our own situations in a job search or job loss. So what does the research about trauma tell us about how to deal with stress? Well, first of all, it says that we really can't respond productively unless we create a sense of safety. We calm the body. One of the dangers of losing a job is that we develop a story of victimization, that we are not in control of what's happened to us, that we are subject to the kind of the whims of fate. And so there's a story that we can tell us that actually ourselves that disables us. And it's very important that we tell ourselves a new story. Even if we feel like we're lying to ourselves, even if we don't really believe it, we need to start to put into words a story that gives us a sense of power and self-efficacy. We need to understand that the past doesn't determine what's going to happen in the future. So oftentimes a memory is so much a part of our lives, at least I know for me it is. But memory of what happened in the past gives us a sense of assurance that we know what's going to happen in the future. And of course, we've all heard the term, the devil you know. So there's a way in which, I don't want to say everybody, but I guess I'll point to myself, is that sometimes it's more comforting to feel like I know what's going to happen, even if it's bad, than to deal with the unknown. So we use the past kind of as a blueprint for the present or the future. It can be a really bad blueprint or a really lousy roadmap. So we need to be able to tear that up and create a different kind of map for ourselves. And again, the way we do this, I really strongly believe, is we start with recalibrating the body and learning how to calm ourselves down so that we can get access to the resources that we have within ourselves. So let's do a few exercises here. Let's see. All right, I'm going to skip over this and come back to it because we're getting a little bit short on time. Let's just go through this quickly before I go to the exercise. There are a lot of different ways to recalibrate. I started telling myself the sky is free. For me, when I look at the sky, particularly at sunrise or sunset, there's a way in which it just takes me out of myself and I physically feel better. It gives me a sense of expansiveness, that I'm even bigger than I think I am, or I'm not quite so important as I think I am as well. We're also recalibrating through physical activity, or through art, music, using our imagination, and through sleep. These are ways that we can actually calm ourselves and allow ourselves to deal in a more productive way with those stressors that we're encountering on a daily basis. And we talked earlier about making time for these things. I mean, all I can say is pick something and make it a priority. For me, during COVID, it became walking. I just decided walking for me was going to be like brushing my teeth, and I did it every day. So you know what you enjoy, or you can try something different, but all of these activities are extremely helpful in dealing with stress. Anybody else have any that they want to share that are helpful for them? All right, I guess I covered it all, or we need to move to the exercise. All right, so some of this recalibration is in different forms of working with the body: yoga, journaling, or talking to a friend, doing breathing exercises, Tai Chi. There are all kinds of things. What I want to do with you today is a little bit of an example from a practice called Jin Shin Jitsu. That's the second to the last here. And this is something I had experience with during an illness I was dealing with. Actually, Alex came up to me and told me about his wife, Monica, who does this practice she's actually trained to do Jin Shin Jitsu. And it's, she would be better at describing it than I am, but it's a Japanese practice of, it's not quite acupuncture, but it's a way to use touch to more fully inhabit our bodies. So I've been working with Monica for, I guess, I don't know, a couple years right now individually, and she also has a group that meets. And it sounds maybe too simple to be true, but let's give it a try, everybody. There's nobody looking at you, so it's, and this is actually an exercise that you can do on your own. You could be in an interview, and this is a wonderful way to calm yourself. So there are many aspects to it, but let's just do something really simple. We've got two hands here, presumably, or even if I think we all have two hands. Let's start what we're going to do is very gently start by holding our thumbs and just silently holding that thumb. And just experience that. Just notice what is going on with your body. This may not be working for everybody because you have to find what works for you. But my experience of this is that as I do that, there's sort of this sense of connectedness and calm that comes with that connection, to just this simple connection to my thumb. Then let's move to the forefinger. Just holding that very gently and lovingly. And then we go to the middle finger. When you're doing this on your own, you can really spend as much time as you want. But I just want to show you an example of what you can do so simply. That is a way to calm yourself. It's also really beneficial if you can't sleep and you're worrying at night. This is a go-to for me as a way to get to sleep. And again, just to give you a little background, you can either continue doing this or, obviously not. But as a background, when I went to Monica, I was dealing with an illness, and I just felt after working with her just this sense of energy and aliveness. This Jinshin Jitsu is a Japanese practice, and it's a way of balancing the body. I put her website on, and you can probably recognize that it's the Landing Expert because it's connected to Alex's, but you learn more about that there, and if you'd like to investigate that more, you can contact Monica about it. But this is just such an amazingly simple practice. For some people, they may go, ugh, this doesn't do it for me. But if it has some resonance for you, just try it on your own. This is just one of many kinds of things that you can do through that. And again, there are so many practices that could be yoga that you do, but doing something very, I guess what I would say is on a regular basis, on a daily basis, it becomes sort of a base to go back to. And again, it doesn't quite matter what you do, but it's good to have these practices to support you and to help you in dealing with stress that can become overwhelming. All right. I'm going to go to that. Looks like I've got a few questions here. Let's see. All right, we're going to go back. All right. So we're talking about all the kinds of things we can do to recalibrate the body. Guess Greg says agree with the walking. MW said wearing a Fitbit, walking 1,000 steps. I really believe in measuring. It really helps me. I have a goal. My goal this year is to average like 3 miles a day. So for people like me that kind of need that, it's really helpful to get that feedback. Donald said listening to music is his go-to. And I'd emphasize that we all have this knowledge. We know what works for us. The important thing is to make that time, to make that a huge, make that an immovable priority for yourself. James says doing something that you enjoy helps relieve stress. Absolutely. I think when we're looking for a job that feels so overwhelmingly important, I know I fall into the trap of like, there's nothing else I should be doing than looking for a job. And so it really takes a lot of discipline to actually take time out for myself. Let's see, where are we? Edith says, all of the creative endeavors along with physical activity, exercise, enriches and balances our health. Absolutely, absolutely. So it's like a hugely important investment. I mean, if you think about it that way, it's sort of like putting money into your savings bank when you do exercise, when you do these kinds of practices. Patrick says, with journaling, should you write as if you're writing to a third party or writing to yourself? I don't know. I haven't thought about it. I usually write to myself, but I kind of like the idea of writing to a third party. I would just try it, practice it, and see what seems to be most helpful for you. I like that third party idea. I think I'm going to try that one. Okay, Greg says, please explain the exercise better. Are you holding the fingers with your other hand? Sorry, let me go back to that. Yes, you're using one hand to hold the fingers and the other, and just one finger at once. You may start with the thumb. It doesn't matter which hand you start with. You could start with your right or left. If you have time, the best, just go through each of the 10 fingers. So go from the, one hand to the next. But yes, you are holding the fingers with the other hand. Dom says tapping EFT was developed by a PhD at University of California to help astronauts with stress. Huh, I did not know that at all. That is so cool. I went through that list pretty quickly, but there's something called tapping, which is actually literally you're tapping on different parts of your body to calibrate it. And, for people that, I'm stunned by that. That's so cool. So that's I think it's actually a Japanese practice. I remember reading there, but I think it's been really adopted and in the West. All right, well, thank you all for all of your contributions. Again, as I say, all of you are experts on this, experts on stress and dealing with it. I think, again, I can't emphasize enough, your 5 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, an hour a day. That's what I'd really like you to take out of this presentation, is to take that time for yourself, because if your body is in a good place, your mind will follow, and believe me, it really will. Okay. We may be beating this thing to death here. I feel like we kind of almost had a good ending here, but I'm just going to get you back to a stressful space for a moment. We also want to be aware not just of what we can do to help ourselves, but understand what we do to distract ourselves or to respond to stress. For some, it's distraction. I feel like the older I'm getting, the more distracted I get. So focusing gets more difficult. Procrastination is a favorite. Maybe eating or not eating, especially working from home. It's really easy to run and get a snack. Drinking, worrying is another way we respond, not particularly productively, but somebody described it once to me like you're sitting in your driveway, you're sitting in your driver's seat of your car, you have your hands on the wheels, and you think you're going somewhere. So worrying it feels like it's productive, but it's not necessarily. Another response to stress, again, is that feeling like we always should be working. And that is just a killer, because we're never giving ourselves the rest or recovery that we need to be resilient. So again, what I think is most important here is that we tune into our bodies and to also understand that our thoughts, what we think, are extremely important, and they can give us tremendous power. But when we have this stream of worry, of thinking, of obsessive, that has this kind of obsessive quality, we want to tune into how am I experiencing my thoughts? Is there a way in which I can think differently by recalibrating my body and allowing a little bit more space into that? And let's do a little exercise here and see if we can create some space in between our thoughts. All right, so this is an awareness exercise. Oops. Going back a little bit, going forward a little bit too much. All right, so here we are. You can either close your eyes or not. This is not to, can do it anyway. Sometimes it's easier to close your eyes, but again, this is just a simple exercise you can do. So you first want to start by being aware of your breathing. And here you're not necessarily trying to force anything, but just be aware of your breath going in and out. Because as we connect to that breath, we're fundamentally connecting to our body and that life-giving property of the breath. So even just this first part of the exercise, if you could do that, let's say before an interview, instead of cramming, just take a few minutes, or at the beginning of your day, or if you find that your body is really tensed up over one thing or the other. Just remember that just pausing, closing your eyes, and connecting to your breath has a way of calming yourself, has a way of calming your body and calming your mind. You can practice this even with your eyes open, so that if you're in a stressful situation that you have got to respond to, you're aware, but you're aware of that breath. And in that awareness, you're not, the worry has an opportunity to dissipate. You still may be thinking, but you're not quite so defined by your thoughts. So let's just shift our awareness a little bit from our breath to our minds and see what's going on there. Just kind of check in to those thoughts that are occurring for you. And they may be, your mind still may be working really hard. You may be worried about something you have to do, or you might say, gosh, Kathy's running over, we need to move on. I may be worried about that. But whatever it is, let's just see if you can create a little bit more space between your thoughts. Look for that space. So you're not really getting rid of your mind. You're not going blank, but you're just slowing things down a little bit. And you're creating that open focus that can be so valuable in accessing more of our ability to solve problems, to meet the challenges that we have with more calm. So those are just two sort of little awareness exercises that you can do to, again, to help you. You know, just things that that you put in your backpack and bring with you. They're free. You know, it's great. You don't have to pay anything for them. And so there are many, many things like that. And I encourage you after this presentation or even now, just to pick one thing that came out of this that might be useful for you. There's a lot we can read, a lot we can investigate and learn. But if there's one thing, I mean, that you kind of have the PhD of me is what I call it. I mean, you know yourself, so tap into your own self-knowledge and just allow yourself to benefit yourself on your own behalf and how you work and deal with stress. I've got a couple more slides that kind of change the mood a little bit, but they're going to be there on the website so people can access them. I'll put them up for just a couple minutes so you can see them, because I think they're, you know, it's always nice to have tips. If some of the stuff that I've gone through with the exercises feels a little too loosey-goosey for you, I've added some more practical, maybe, you know, kind of literal things that you can do to manage stress. And some of these are also reminders of what we went over through in the presentation. So that's taking care of the basics is extremely important. And then knowing to take action. And a lot of times that means having some kind of plan when you sit down to your desk in the morning, so that you're not kind of floating around with all these multiple priorities. You actually made a decision about what you're going to do first thing and get momentum. Then there's obviously meditation and the gratitude practice and some of these exercises that I've gone over. We've talked about the importance of connecting to other people, that social support is extremely important. And the ability and determination, I really think it takes determination to learn to take time off and relax. I went on vacation only for a couple days a few weeks ago, and honestly, I have to admit it was the first time I never brought a manuscript with me. I'm really bad at turning off, and it was amazing what happened when I just literally left work behind. I couldn't remember how long it had been that I'd been that relaxed on a vacation. And I didn't do all that much. It was great. Then the next tips I would say is live by the clock and kill the clock. If you've got things that you need to get done, you know, that use that stress response in a productive way. Maybe time yourself getting tasks done that don't take a lot of thought or planning. You know, just knock them off, and that'll give you energy. The other thing is there are times when that tactic really doesn't work. And I find that I have to force myself to say, you know what, today is a day I really need to just think about things and not do. And it goes really against the grain because I don't feel productive at all. But I'm actually being really productive because I'm giving myself the space to think and plan and not really be watching the clock so much, but go into that space where I can really focus. Another approach is to focus on somebody else and volunteer. Number 8 is one I just came across, which I think is really interesting. And there's a book called Good Anxiety or Good Worry, and I think I've got it in the resource list. And that's basically counter the what ifs. So sometimes stress comes in the form of having all these things going through our head. Well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if that happens? And she's advocating that you actually, you know, make it a tick list, an action list, so that if there's anything you can do to counter those what ifs. So what if, you know, in this interview, somebody asks me, what are my strengths and weaknesses? Instead of panicking, you actually spend time answering that question in advance and practicing that question. Then the others we've talked about to some extent. You want to get out of your head, and you know, laughter, singing, painting, moving, and then, you know, if you're really stuck, if you're really having panic attacks and anxieties, And this isn't something you can do yourself. Don't hesitate at all to get professional help with that. So I'm just going to leave that because we've got so much. We've gone over here. But again, if we can see stress as a challenge rather than a threat, and we really cultivate resources within and outside of ourselves to see it with that perspective. Actually, things that seem like bad things that happen to us can actually open new possibilities. And as we stretch ourselves and do things that we're not accustomed to, we're so much, I guess I'd call it increasing a range of motion. If you've ever recovered from surgery, you know you got to get that range of motion back. So let's all of us work on our range of motion. Anyway, I think that's about it. I've got a list of resources. This is posted on the website, David, is that right?
It's there now. Just
okay,
posted.
Good. So it's posted. So I really don't want to take the time to go through that, but I want to thank you so much for your attention and contributions, particularly to this this presentation, and really so much appreciate your coming today. And we are all in this together. We all have our separate challenges, but again, the support and connection with each other are so useful in dealing with the challenges that we face. So thank you so much.
Cathy, thank you so much. If there are any last questions, you're welcome to put that into the chat and Cathy can address them, or quickly just unmute yourself. Otherwise, we will begin to wrap up and then end the presentation and the recording and keep the mic open. Some nice kudos for you in the chat, so thank you for that, folks. So did I say, or did Cathy say her slide deck is available? Yes, it's in the website now, psgofmercercounty.org. On the right side of every web page is a link called Meeting Presentation Documents. And so what usually is there when a presenter can provide that are the slide deck and a link to the video. Of course, the video is not ready yet, so that's not going to be there. But during the presentation, I was pie slicing my time and doing a little bit of posting and a little bit of listening at the same time. So the slide deck is there. Most of our presenter presentation slide decks are there as well. And then at the bottom of that page, there are links to the prior years. And so we have most of our slide decks since late 2013. So if there's a rainy day coming up and you're not very busy job hunting, you may want to look at some of the old presentations as well. And so what we have coming up over the next couple of weeks, next week we will be right back here. Keisha Butler-Thomas will be here. She is a certified branding strategist, just a specialist in social media and personal and professional branding. And she's going to talk to us about social media unlocked. So she's going to tell us some of the tricks of the trade in social media for being found and promoting yourself using different online resources. So I'm so happy that Keisha will be here. First time she'll be visiting us. That'll be next time, November 12th. Then the following week, November 19th, Bill Pagula will be here to discuss develop your marketing plan, a whole plan and strategy for moving forward, keeping yourself focused, keeping yourself organized as you go through your job search. So that's what we have over the next 2 weeks. Other groups, other friends of the groups, next week, next Saturday at the Breakfast Club of New Jersey. They meet Saturday, the 13th of November at 8 o'clock in the morning. So get up early with a cup of coffee or tea. Bill LaChance and Sean Lovison will be here, or be there, talking about money-saving strategies during a career transition. So that's what will be at the Breakfast Club next week, November 13th. Oh, that's who will be there. And some of our friend and partner organizations, PSG of Central New Jersey meets Mondays at 10:30 in the morning. So you can check them out at psgcnj.biz, psgcnj.biz. They are still meeting virtually. And PSG of Morris County will be meeting each Wednesday morning at 9:30, psgmc.org, psgmc.org. Go check out their programs as well. And so once again, Cathy, thank you so much. Thank you for being such a big friend of our group and you know, the work, of course, that you do on our executive committee, as all of our executive committee does. So thank you so much for that. Yeah. And I'll simply say, until we get to see all of you real soon, either in person or virtually, we'll simply for now say, bye, everybody.